Okay, it's great. I guess this is my. It's not a rant. It's more of a ramble about the four countries of wine that I'll be doing. The two old world that I have chose is Portugal, which is over here, little island next to Spain. And then, oh wait, I did not need to go out. Germany's like right there. And then, of course, two new worlds, which I chose United States, and where's Oceania? It's down there. Australia. Anyways, Australia in Oceania. We all know where Australia is. Hopefully. So, I guess I'll start with the history of wine in Portugal. So, why Portugal is a old world country. That means that wine has been there since like BC, especially with the Romans. The Romans very much valued the Iberian Peninsula, which the Arabian Peninsula is just it's literally just this area with Spain and Portugal. So, and Portugal's wine techniques is usually I just noticed that poster. Portugal's wine techniques are directly connected to the monastery because monks actually were the first ones to be doing everything with viniculture and trying to make wine and keep the vineyards safe. And since Portugal is well known for port wine that actually was started happening in the 17th century, the British developed a taste that they wanted. They developed a taste for the Douro Valley, that type of wine. So of course they needed to send. Well, I can use the map from Portugal all the way up to the UK. Okay, I passed geography to the UK. So, in order to do that, they had to make the wine be able to last for trips onto the sea. Which leads to the wine making process. So, usually, the grapes in Portugal are harvested at a later date in order to get much more moderate sugar levels into the grapes for its pressed and crushed, depending on whether you want white or red wine. You will leave it with its skins a little bit more to fermentate. In Portugal, since it is still an old world country, they still use some of the traditional winemaking techniques such as foot treading, and they sometimes use oak barrels. For the port wine, as I was discussing earlier, they add wine spirits in order to stop the fermentation or to stop the yeast from actively eating all the residue that is included. And then it's aged in oak barrels and they bottle it, put in a cork stopper. And interesting fact, Portugal is also a main producer of corks for wine bottles. So then back to its history. Doing that, and also main thing about Portugal is because it is used as a way, like a stop, a resting place during the World of Discovery in order to go from Africa and Asia. Yeah, because you would go through the Asia Discovery, alright? Sailors were able to bring new grape varieties. And then in the 19th century, a insect epidemic happened that devastated many vineyards called Phylloxera, which will be more discussed whenever I talk about the United States. And then in the 20th century, wine regulations became a big wine regulation was already a big thing, but 21s they were put into to put in that designate specific regions for quality wine. Now, another major thing about Portugal would be its geography, because Portugal is divided into many wine regions. Now, the main three I'll be talking about are the Vinho Verde, which is up here, number one. I don't know if you can read that. Here, number one. And then Tras Los Montes, behind, which means behind the mountains, which is over here, region 2. And of course, Duero, which is where port is mainly made, which Duero is on the map right there. I'm a little blind. Anyways, so talking about Vinho Verde, which means a green wine. It is as seen on the map. It is the northwest most northwest region. In this region, due to its climate, wine has developed a signature style that is actually more light and refreshing, and this is due to the grapes there ripening with more moderate sugar levels than a usual grape has. And red Vinho Verde is also produced there. However, while it is produced there and it's popular within the country of Portugal, but it is rarely seen shipped out. And now to the second region, Tras Los Montes, behind the mountains, which is northeast, not northwest, maybe borders Spain. Over here, in that region, what makes it unique is it has citrus soil, which is actually similar to slate. It's a type of metamorphic soil, and it's similar also to the soil that is located in the Douro Valley. The climate that is in the Tras Los Montes is harsh winters and low rainfall in summers, and they have lighter reds compared to Douro. And now to the Douro Valley. Douro actually didn't gain popular at first due to fortified wines being the main focus nowadays, because it was seen as what was being shipped and what was actually making money compared to making table wines and all that. So Douro has a hot, arid region, steep slopes, and they have the varietals of, I'm gonna mess this up, Touriga Nacional and Touriga França. I hope I said that right. And blended wines are common here, and they're high in tannin and flavor. Another thing about Portugal is there are strict wine regulations there. They have the DOC and IPR that help make sure that everything is being labeled correctly and has met the standards in order to receive certain labels. Now, some white grapes from Portugal is Louro, which is grown in Vinho Verde, and it's the most fragrant of the region. Its wine profile, as Wine Folly says, is grapefruit and lime. And Arinto, which is also a white grape, is grown in North and Central Portugal. It's used mostly for dry and tangy wines, and it has hints of citrus flavors. Now, Verdelho is usually used for soft flavored wines and soft, savory, full flavor table wines, and they have hints of gooseberry and honey. And moving on to some grape wines. They have Farah, which is a late ripening variety one. It's a lean tannic red, and it's used as a base for sparkling wines. It has its flavor profile is blackberry and dried cherries, and Castello is planted mostly in the south of Portugal, and it's used mostly for gamey reds. Now, the wine I have chosen from Portugal in order to talk about is actually, well, first of all, they label it mostly by region instead of by the grape varietal. So the region would be Taylor Port, and from the prestigious Taylor Port House in Portugal, I have chosen to talk about the vintage. Now, Taylor House is very prestigious in Portugal, and it because of their reputation for adhering to strict grape selection and using the traditional grape winemaking skills. Now, vintage port is only made during certain years, only produced only in certain years, and in those certain years, at max, it is produced 3 times a decade, and it is in Douro Valley. Vintage port is known for its deep color and intense fruit flavors, has blackberries, plums, and spice as its flavor profile. It's aged in wooden vats, then bottled, and the aging process continues in a bottle. And then, due to its popularity and its high prestige, it has led to the promotion of port wine in Portugal. And now to the second old world country I am talking about, which is Germany. Now, Germany also has a rich wine history. In the 18th century, Charlemagne was the first one to regulate viniculture, as well as wine-related commerce. But the real golden age of German wine would be in the 19th century, when wines from Rhine and Moselle were they were basically the favorites among royalty. Royals loved it, and it fetched higher prices than Champagne and Bordeaux, which is very popular in France, who is also a lead old world wine country. And interesting about what Germany is known for, Riesling. Riesling actually wasn't documented until the earliest record of, let me rephrase that, the earliest record of Riesling is actually documented in March 13th, 1435. And it is it is said to be an inventory from Count John IV, and the spelling of Riesling was Reislingen, and it did not get its modern spelling that we know of today until 1552 by a German bonus and Bontes, and physician who helped with the study of plants. And it is agreed that Riesling most likely had origins in the Rhine region. And a fun fact is due to this many discovery that they have figured out. Oh wait. Oh, I messed up. Backtrack to Portugal. This is Taylor Port. I forgot to introduce it. As you can see, it's mostly just it focuses on the wine label focuses on where it's from more than the vine varietal in, because it is basically seen as more of the region it's from is kind of like its own prestige. Back to Germany. So Germany wine regions. Germany has many different wine regions, but most of the regions can be seen to be mostly located down south compared to Portugal, which they had south, north, and wherever they could grow. So it's mostly concentrated in the south, except for a few in the east. Now, the main thing about Germany is it is known to have moderate summer temperatures, which causes the grapes to have low alcohol levels, and the diversity due to its similar climate across many of the wine regions. The differences in the flavors is actually more brought out based on the variety of the grapes and also by the soil in its specific wine region. So first, let's talk about, where are you? Baden, which is the yellow one. So it's this long thing right here. It has a warm sunny climate. It is mostly known for the Rivaner vineyards. Müller Thurgau is its proper name. It is the third most planted grape in Germany, and it is known for being a dry food compatible and food compatible with Burgeners, which is basically two Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc. And now we moved on to the second one, which is the second wine region, which is Rheinhessen. It is the largest wine region with a valley with rolling hills, steep vineyards, sites, and it's known to have the largest planted variety of Sylvaner, which is a very old grape varietal that is very well known and has a prestige. Due to it being the largest wine region, it has a wide range of wines that can be there, from just a pleasant, easy wine to if you want a more classical and elegant wine. Oh wait, I didn't point out where Resson is orange. So it's somewhere right here. And now to the third one, which is Pfaff. Greens. Dark green. It's this one right here. It's located to the south of Ranson. And its climate is similar to Alsace, which is also, so it's similar to which is one of the sunniest and driest of the wine regions. Majority of the wine grapes that are planted there are of grape, with a whopping 60% of the grapes being white. And it has the largest arcage, actually, of Riesling grape planted there. They create some pleasant white wines, the Müller Thurgau. Pinot Grigio, which is, they have a weird name for it in German, Grauburgunder. I don't even want to try to pronounce Pinot Blanc's name in German. And they have some grapes. And they make and then they also make a fruity red wine known as Portuguese. And due to more of a demand for red wine, they are starting to plant more of Dornfelder, which can, if planted in, if the winemaker knows what they're doing, can actually create a good, deep colored and complex wine. So the winemaking in Germany, with the vineyard sites, are mostly located on steep slopes and along river valleys. They also harvest later in the season than usual because it is important for certain aged wines like Spätlese and Auslese. They leave them to fermentate in stainless steel or large wooden barrels, whichever one depends on the winemaker's style. And they are having more of a growing trend for Trocken wines, which is basically, it's their way of saying it's a dry wine. Now, the wine regulations of Germany are actually pretty strict as well. So, since I cannot pronounce German for the life of me, these wine regulations were created in order to ensure quality and authenticity. This one right here is the common. It's common and it is translated to German wine law. And the basic level, which is the rest of industrial one, is basically German wine. It's the most basic level. There's Landwein, which is up level from industrial wine, and then there's QBA and QBA and Potterset is actually a way of measuring. It's measured. Is actually a labeling system, which they use to label the grapes' ripeness levels and the vineyard's specific terroir. So each category in this one would tell you the level of the grape's ripeness and basically whether it will be sweet in the final wine. And the chosen wine I chose for Germany is, of course, its most well-known one, Riesling. The reason why is because I swear I hear somebody bring up Riesling every day in class. So the aromas of Riesling is mostly of orchard fruits. You have nectarine, apricot, and pear. And then you have dry Riesling because there is a misconception that German wines are that Riesling not well yeah Riesling wines are sweet, and so this is a way to tell them this is going to be dry. And then a key factor of German Rieslings is that it will have probably scents of diesel and petroleum, and Riesling has high acidity, and they don't really blend Riesling grapes with any other except for French, which means maiden's milk. That is like one of the only ones that I found if they ever did blend, to my knowledge. And Riesling pairs well with duck, pork, chicken. If you want to add spices, cayenne pepper, ginger, and clove are good. If you want to add in roasted vegetables, you have red onion and bell pepper. So that is all for the Old World wine. I am about to forget to do my photo again. Oh no. Alright, so the next one I'll be moving on to would be the USA. So the USA is actually a New World country. It has not really. It basically means that it came late into. Alright, I will find the photo later. Basically, US wine history. Wine was introduced to the US in about the 16th century, even though I'm sure many people know California is the biggest producer of wine. Talk about it more when I go to the different wine regions in the US. But California was, even though wine was introduced in the 16th century, California did not actually become a big producer of wine until the 19th century. Now, whenever explorers first came to the US and they wanted to make wine from the native grapes here, they found out that the grapes here were too small, had too much acid, and they did not really taste well. So they decided to, if that wouldn't work, let's just bring in grapes from the old world. Grapes, like grape cuttings from France, Spain, Portugal, from there over to the US. Unfortunately, they forgot that the climate here in the US is much different compared to France, Germany, and all the other old world countries. Due to that, the vines would die. Another thing that happened was there was a pest here in the US, which, as I said, in Portugal, called phylloxera, which damaged the vines, and they caused all the ones that they brought over to just shrivel up and die. But a good thing from them bringing over the vines from the old world country was that while they did die, the pollen was able to be transported with some of the native wine grapes here, which made a hybrid. So by the 1850s, wine was being made. Less than like 3% of the US was drinking wine, but wine was being made. Which brings me to the first wine region that most people know of, California. They produce 90% of the wine here in the US. And is actually a major factor for why wine here in the US actually became big due to the gold rush. Due to the gold rush causing immigrants to come over and share their wine making skills. I don't know why I said it like that. Do have their own wine making skills because the immigrants over here found out, hey, the climate here in California is actually more similar to those in France because they're in France because they're on the same latitude. And California is known to have, so California became big. And some of its most well-known places that grows wine is Napa and Sonoma, so yeah, two famous wine regions in California. And they're mainly in California is mainly known for making Cabernet Sauvignons and Zinfandel wines. Second wine region in the US would be Oregon. Now, Oregon is known for making Pinot Noir and aromatic white wines. Oregon has sunny summers and cool nights, and is actually on the same latitude as Burgundy, France, which kind of made it easier to plant grapes there. Oregon has some hilly landscapes, and Jason Lent was recognized to be the first person to find out that Pinot would be successful in Oregon in 1965. Now, the Pinot Noir, well, most of the grapes in Oregon will have a higher natural acidity compared to those in California. Now, the third wine region here in the US would be Washington, which is second to California in the importance of wine. And the the vineyards in Washington are mostly located on the east, with the Cascade Mountain next to the Cascade Mountain Range, which acts as kind of a rain barrier, so it allows the vines to grow. Washington is known to have hot, dry summers, and is known to make Merlot, Riesling, and Chardonnay. Due to the US being a new world country, we have more lax rules of wine regulations compared to the old world countries. The wine regulations we have here are mostly of the AVA labels, American Viticultural Area. Some well-known ones would be if the Pacific grapes has to have like a certain amount of grapes coming from that are from. It's basically saying that these grapes are from this particular region. An example would be the Napa Valley or the Sonoma Valley in California. Another regulation we have is the Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. They regulate basically what you need to put on the bottle, which is basically the alcohol content, ABV. Wine has to have like a certain percentage of the grapes to have the AVA label, and then the TB, the Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, in cognizance in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, sets guidelines for organic and biodynamic wine production, and regulates the importation of wine. Now, Pacific labor requirements and quality standards have to be put on the wine in order for it to be imported successfully into the US, or they will not allow it to be. Now, winemaking in the US is very diverse because, again, new world, not old world. Entrepreneurship, that is a hard word. So, harvesting. So, it's basically however it gets done, the wine is made. So, harvesting is done by hand or machine. Sometimes they press by machines. Sometimes they might go the traditional way with foot train. It basically depends. They use a variety of yeast strains to control fermentation and control the fermentation temperatures within. And when they had to bottle the wine after it was done with its fermentation process, they would have filter it to make sure it's stable and it has clarity. Sometimes they would add egg whites to increase its clarity. And the labeling in contrast to the labeling for old world countries, the labels have more information here in the US with brand name, the grape variety, the alcohol content, and the origin of the wine. Now, the chosen wine I have chosen to talk about for the US is Zinfandel. So, Zinfandel is a red wine grape variety, mostly it's synonymous with California now. In the US, style of Zinfandel is known for its bold fruit flavors, and its flavor profile is of blackberry, cherry, and plum. California Zinfandel has higher alcohol content, and apparently there is something called Old Vine Zinfandel. Apparently these are like the original vines or something. They're vines that could be like over 100 years old. And some articles say that it's actually just probably at 50 years at minimum to be considered an old vine Zinfandel. But Zinfandel pairs well with grilled meats, barbecue, and spicy dishes. There's even their own fan club for Zinfandel called the Zinfandel Advocacy Group. And California remains the main producer of high-quality Zinfandel wines in the U.S. Now, the second New World country I would like to talk about is Australia and Oceania. So, the wine history in Australia is mostly connected to a guy named James Busby, who was basically he was having his own vineyards for personal uses more than commercial uses. He would bring vine cuttings from Europe in the 1830s, and the vine cuttings that he brought over became known as the Busby Collection. It led to a crucial role into establishing Australia as a wine industry. So he distributed the vines to Hunter Valley, South Wales, Barossa Valley, and I found this very coincidental. Australia also had its own gold rush that led to a popularity of wine making in the mid 19th century, and it led to an expansion of vineyards planting. But after the mid 19th century, like not even a few later, in the late 19th century, they got hit by the same bug, Phylloxera. But unlike Portugal, which suffered mass devastation of vineyards, the root stocks of the vines over in Australia were more resistant compared to others, and this incident of a bug that is threatening wine grapes has led to an importance on the grape varietals that Australia has. So in the late 20th century, winemakers began focusing on making high quality wines because high quality wines, and Australia is also well known for their innovative winemaking methods. They're not afraid to try and mix and blend wine grapes together compared to the old world, which is more certain rules, certain regulations. Like Germany, they will only blend Riesling with this very other Pacific wine grape that translates as maiden's milk. Australia, they blend with whatever they want. But there have been some successes from this technique, as Australia, not Austria, Austria's old world country, Australia has now become synonymous with the Syrah grape varietal, which used to be like well known in France. It is now well known for Australia. As I said before, the main wine regions, which Busby gave James Busby gave his vine cuttings to. Let's start with Barossa Valley. It's the oldest vineyard there is, and what's most unique about Barossa Valley is the bug Phlorexa hasn't yet infected a piece of vineyard soil there. And the second world country would be, not the second world country, the second, I messed up. Second wine region of Australia would be New South Wales. And it's a producer of commercial Chardonnay in Teresa. But there have been severe droughts that have been happening in this wine region that has led to experiments on trying to plant wine grapes that don't need that much water, as Temprano and Veredo, which, as you know, which I mentioned before whenever I was talking about Portugal's wine grapes. And then the third region that I like to talk about would be Victoria. Over here, it's also commercial winemaking that makes up the majority of the wine product, and it has a cool climate, and due to this cool climate, their Pinot Noir is like well renowned in that area. Australia actually does have a few more wine regulations compared to the USA, but they have a little bit lax compared to the old world countries. So they use a GI system, the geographic indication system, in order to regulate and protect names of wine regions, because Barossa hasn't been affected by the Phlorexa insects. I think I changed its name like 3 different times throughout this recording. And then they have strict wine label regulations by the Australian Grape and Wine Authority, AGWA. That is its acronym. And the labels must include the grape variety, the vintage year, alcohol content, and geographical origin of the grapes. The Australian Grape and Wine Authority also sets its standards for wine production to ensure quality and safety, make sure everyone gets what they're buying. And they must adhere to these standards in order for their wine to be exported, which is similar to how the USA had put down regulations that wine bottlers need to have in order to accept those importations. Australia has regulations in order to ship out your wine. There has now been a growing emphasis on some sustainable practices in Australia, which led to the Australian Wine Industrials Entwine Australia program. That is very long name, no acronym apparently. And Australia also has a wine tax, which is regulated by the Australian Taxation Office, ATO, and they manage the wine equalization tax, which is called WET. I find that hilarious. So the tax applied, I can't say the wet tax because that's what the wet tax, the wine equalization tax, is applied to wholesale value of wines, but they do make some exceptions for small producers of wine. Look at them supporting small businesses. So wine, and then they have a wine program that winemakers can choose to apply for, which is the Australian Certified Organic Program, ACO. So it just certifies their wine is organic. As said before, Australia is well known for its innovative winemaking skills, winemaking methods. I guess it's a skill in of itself, how innovative they get sometimes. So, they do stainless steel, they do French and American oak. They use machines, they don't use machines. They harvest pressing, they harvest by hand. Many differences, many styles that they choose. Now, some white wines of Australia is Chardonnay. Oh, wait, let me try to remember. Alright, this is apparently what has been recommended as wines you have to try if you visit Australia. They recommend that you get Chardonnay that was bottled in Victoria because it has a lighter and less oaky style compared to most. It has floral and citrus notes. Pairs well with whitefish and seafood in general. Another white wine, Semillon. They recommend you get it in Hunter Valley, one of the oldest wine regions there is. Also, where James Bussey gave out his vine cuttings to, Hunter Valley. We have the Semillon there has kind of a crisp zesty profile flavor, and it pairs well with seafood as well. For Pinot Noir, they recommend you go to Port Phillip Bay. The Pinot Noir is usually it's a big and bold flavor. And if you want, the Mornington Peninsula developed a unique restraint on this Pinot Noir, which resulted in a more earthy taste in it. And it has aromas of cherry, cranberry, and rose. And that is all. I thank you for these 40 minutes